Chapter 13, Syndrome. If he wanted to, he could squash the kid like a bug. As Syndrome stood in the control center, watching Violet get attacked, for a brief second he thought about allowing the Omnidroid V.8X to do just that. Killing Mr. Incredible's kid, he could retell that story for years. But no, he had to keep his head here. What he was trying to accomplish was so epic, so unexpected, so spectacular, he couldn't fall victim to the quick and easy kill. He had actual super kids at his disposal that he could mold as he pleased. Oh, to think of the possibilities. Sure, the non-super baby was a disappointment, but the older boy, Dash, was like a sponge, soaking up every word he said. The speed of his could come in handy. But Violet, she was the clear prize. The minute Mirage sent back intel on the girl, Syndrome knew if he played his cards right, he could turn that shy, moody wallflower into a grief-stricken rage machine. Who better to teach her to channel rage and bitterness into brilliance than he? Over the years, he'd learned that if you push the right buttons, anyone could become hell-bent on destroying the people who wronged you. That's why he was so successful today. He may have loathed Mr. Incredible, but really, he should have thanked the guy. He hadn't become a billionaire obsessed with making supers obsolete by being a fanboy in the Mr. Incredible fan club. He no longer had any interest in being a sidekick. Mr. Incredible giving him the cold shoulder as a kid had been exactly what he needed to become someone with tech advancements that every country wanted to get their hands on. His weapons were a threat, and as he'd teach Violet, being a threat gave a person power. Violet was a threat too, even if she didn't realize it yet. And if he finally got his hands on that nullifier, oh, the possibilities. It was only 9 a.m, and already he could tell this was going to be the best day ever. Syndrome! Violet's screams echoed through the domed enclosure. He wasn't sure if she realized yet that he could hear her loud and clear. She'd missed that he'd planted a small mic on her t-shirt when they'd gotten to the buggy. Syndrome, help me! From high above, on multiple monitors and through the windows, he watched Violet hang by her feet, the blood rushing to her head as the Omnidroid held her in its clutches. He let her hang there for a moment. He'd built this place to be a mirror image of the landscape on his private island, which allowed him to test versions of the Omnidroid in both locations. It was also the perfect place to take a super to her knees. Finally, Syndrome pressed the speaker button and spoke calmly. Help yourself. Violet stopped flipping out for a moment, and he saw the wheels inside her brain turning. Yes, Violet, this is a game, and I make the rules. You want to live? Fight. A spark burst from her fingertips, and he held his breath as the kid shot a force field from her hands. It fizzled out within seconds. She could do better than that. It's not working, Violet cried. I can't always make one on command. Syndrome bit his lip, tasting blood. Excuses. He hated them. From his workers, from Mirage, as alluring as she could be, from supers begging for their lives. This kid had all kinds of powers, unfair advantages that he'd never had, and she hadn't even bothered to learn how to use them. Time to figure it out. He touched another button on the panel in front of him. The Omnidroid began to swing Violet around wildly while she screamed in terror. Finally, he released the grip on the arm so that it dropped her a safe distance to the ground. Violet jumped up and ran into the trees, hitting one of the walls of the dome hard. I can't find an exit, she shouted as the Omnidroid turned and came after her. She threw her hands out in front of her and tried another force field. A pitiful one shot out and popped, a hazy purple glow of the kid's energy dissipating quickly. That wouldn't do. Syndrome pressed a few buttons, and a laser in the Omnidroid's eyes targeted Violet, landing on her chest. She looked down in horror. Exit? It was hard to keep the glee out of his voice. We're not leaving this place till you learn how to defend yourself. break walls, destroy robots, take over the world. See that laser focused on you? It means you're this robot's target now. If you want to live, you better learn to make a force field or hide really well using your invisibility. Because where you go, this little number follows. And if it gets a hold of you again... The droid's claws pinched the air menacingly. He saw Violet's expression turn from fear to anger. I told you, I don't know how to control my powers. The droid swung a metal arm dangerously close to her head. Guess it's time to learn. Violet started to run again, ducking through the trees, trying to hide behind a rock. There's no hiding, Violet. Want to hide from the Omnidroid? Disappear. He could see her chest rising and falling. I am trying. The droid swung for her head again, missing a second time. He wasn't really going to kill her, but she had to believe that might be possible. Haven't you done it before? He asked. You did it yesterday. Yes. She ducked behind a rock as the Omnidroid scanned the area, looking for her. But it happened by accident because... Couldn't the kid see what he was getting at? What was happening at the time? Were you scared? Happy? Nervous? Anxious? How did you disappear? The droid shot a laser at a nearby tree that came down at her feet. Violet cried out and started running again. All of the above, Violet said. Please help me. I am helping you, he snapped, despite his best attempts to stay calm. You think if Mastermind finds you and thinks you're anything like your parents, clinging to their powers, you'll live? Nope. You need to stay hidden. You need to be invisible. Tap into that feeling. Think of something that scares you. And if this droid isn't really doing it for you, then think of something else that does frighten you. He saw Violet run into a clearing, scale a large rock, and stand in direct view of the Omnidroid, its roving mechanical eye turned towards her, shining the laser on her chest again. On all his monitors, the sirens went off. Target unlocked, he heard the computer say. Come on, kid, do it, he yelled. Her chest was moving so fast, he was sure the kid was going to pass out, but then she closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and poof, she was gone. All that remained were her clothes. They'd have to figure out how to deal with that. Target lost, the computer announced. You did it! He looked down at his monitors for a second and lost sight of her. Where did she go? His camera zoomed in on the dirt on the ground, and he saw her footprints heading towards the tree line. Then he spotted a headless girl with no limbs. Found you, he said to himself. He turned the Omnidroid her way again. Now the key is to hold it. When you get to Masterminds, you're going to need to stay hidden for as long as possible so you aren't picked up on any of the security cameras. Understand? Violet didn't answer. Violet? Understood, she said, and flickered into view again. The Omnidroid fired a laser blast a few feet from her. He watched as the kid took another deep breath, closed her eyes, and all but her clothes disappeared a second time. That's it, he said excitedly. Now question, can you fire a force field while you're invisible? He stared at her floating clothes again. Nothing happened. I don't think so. Syndrome rolled his eyes. That was a bummer. Then reappear. Let's try some force fields next. He hit a few buttons on the control board again, and the Omnidroid came her way, moving faster this time. The droid clutched her in its claws before she could even react. It's squeezing me, Violet shouted. Then use a force field. Shoot your target and make it let you go. She was swinging back and forth, her head whipping around as she tried in vain to pull herself free. He watched her fingers spark once, twice, then flicker. Another claw came for her head, and she screamed. This droid could easily break her in two. Make a force field, Violet. You're running out of time, he warned and joined himself. Violet's breathing was coming so fast now she couldn't even form sentences. She reached up and pounded on the claw. But if I hit the droid now, I'll fall. I'm too far up. Figure it out, Violet. Make a force field. Her fingers flickered again, and a small force field formed, purple light glowing in the dimly lit forest. It worked for a split second, and Syndrome held his breath, hoping it would grow bigger. Instead, it disintegrated. I can't hold it, she said, sounding small. I'm being squeezed too tight. You have to let me go. I can't do this. You can't do this, he said, pounding his fist on the computer screen so hard he was sure it would crack. You have to do this. I can't. Was she going to start sobbing now? I don't know how to hold it. Weakness was the one thing he couldn't tolerate. A super who could grandstand, who could pretend they were better than everyone else. They demanded a level of respect. Someone who groveled to be saved. He had no use for them. This kid could do it. He could feel it, but maybe fear wasn't the motivator here. She tapped into something to become invisible. He didn't know what it was, though. Was it her pain? If that was the case, maybe he needed to exploit that here as well. He pressed the speaker again. Then you're going to die, Violet. Is that what you want? To leave your brothers all alone in this world? No, she shouted, her limbs disappearing again. He could see her leggings and her shirt wiggling wildly as she still struggled to get free. She looked like a bug caught in a zapper. She reappeared and a small force field shot out. It was a start. You have to do this on your own. Do you think I had anyone out there to help me? No. When I was a kid, the super I wanted to work with told me, fly home, buddy. I work alone. He could have ruined me, but I didn't let him. I got strong. I came up with tech that renders. Super's useless. I'm a billionaire. I learned how to take care of myself. He threw his head back and laughed. Look at that. You got me monologuing. We're supposed to be working on how to keep you and your brothers alive. You need to fight. Your parents are gone. You're all they have left. I know that, Violet screamed. Mastermind took everything from me. So Mastermind, that was the key. He could play into that. Yes, Mastermind did. That villain killed your parents, took their powers, and still killed them. You think if Mastermind learns you have powers and finds you, you'll be safe? After how your parents reacted, I'll bet my money you're doomed. Your only hope is to steal that invention and use it on yourself while you have the chance. She tried to spark another force field, and it grew bigger. This time, she held it a few seconds longer before it popped again. She screamed out in anguish, and the force field that came next was bigger. Grief. He had to tap into her grief. Save your brothers, Violet. You need to get that nullifier from Mastermind first and use it to save what's left of your family. Are you going to let Mastermind destroy your brothers? Violet let out a guttural scream, and a force field shot out in front of her, sending the Omnitroid staggering backwards. The claw unclenched, and Violet dropped to the ground. Syndrome could see her face. Angry, red, laser-focused on the droid in front of her. She shot her hands out in front of her and moved forwards, blasting the robot again and again as she held steady, screaming at the top of her lungs in a way he suspected she'd never screamed before. As a result, the force fields grew larger and moved quicker until the Omnidroid backed up as far as it could go, banging into a rocky incline that made it unstable, a flaw of the V.8X that he would need to fix. The droid fell over. Violet shot a final blast at the machine, and the robot's control panel was engulfed in flames. It would take some serious work to rewire that. Workers came running from every direction to put the Omnidroid out. Nice job, Syndrome cheered. Violet was breathing hard. She looked up at the control room. He didn't realize she could even see him up here, and stared at him darkly. Let's go again. Impressive. This Omnidroid was done for, so he'd have to get another one out of the hangar. But who cared how many she destroyed? Her dad had done the same thing. She was clearly Mr. Incredible's daughter. Thanks to him, the kid understood what she had to do now. How do you feel? He asked. Powerful, she admitted, looking at her hands in wonder. I've never used my powers like that before. No, you haven't. That was incredible. Your powers are only going to get stronger the more you use them and the more you focus. Channel your anger, your pain. Whatever helps you with invisibility, use it. Rage can be your friend, Violet. Rage? She repeated, trying another force field and blasting a rock to smithereens. Yes. Did you feel how strong that force field was when we were talking about Mastermind? That's the key here. When you tap into your anger about Mastermind taking your parents, you can make those force fields as large and as fast as possible. I could do that, Violet's face contorted, looking darker now. She braced her legs and shot her hands out in front of her, shooting a force field so fast that it smashed through one of the glass panels of the dome. Broken glass rained into the arena and workers dived for cover. But Syndrome just stood there and smiled. Tapped into that rage, kid. He pressed another button. Send in a new Omnidroid, he told a worker. We're running the simulation again. We can patch the dome later. Look at what he'd accomplished with one training session. Imagine what he could do over the next few days. See what a good mentor he could be. He knew he had been right about the kids. And here Mirage had said taking them and putting them in harm's way with Mastermind was a bad idea. Sometimes he just didn't get what she was thinking. They'd worked together for 2 years and been a thing for the last few months. He liked her well enough, but he hated her questioning his ideas. Didn't she know by now he always had a plan? And his plan this time was a good one. In a few days' time, he'd have everything he'd ever wanted right at his fingertips. Watch out, Mastermind. Violet's coming for you. Imagine what he could do with some more time with these kids. It made him wonder. Syndrome smiled wider. If only he could see the look on Mr. Incredible's face when he realized his super children were now super villains. There was no stopping him now.